Hello, and welcome to the Quiet and Strong podcast, especially for introverts. I'm your host, David Hall, and creator of quietandstrong.com. It's a weekly podcast dedicated to understanding the strengths and needs of introverts. Introversion is not something to fix, but something to be embraced. Normally, we air each episode on Monday mornings. Be sure to subscribe. We all need connection. Introverts, extroverts. It's just going to look different between introverts and extroverts, and that's fine. It's not right or wrong, but you need to understand what you need. And of course, part of connection is conversation. And as introverts, sometimes we might have many great thoughts and ideas, but they don't easily turn into words. So today we're going to talk about conversations and connections. And if you need to get better, you can. You can get better at these things. Don't worry, we're not trying to turn you into an overly chatty person, but we want to discuss how to have meaningful conversations and also help others to do the same. I'll give you an example. So, I have a favorite convenience store. I think they provide excellent customer service. It's nice, it's clean, it has a wide selection of products, including my favorite brown soda. And what I really love is that I can get in and out really quickly. The employees are always very friendly. And I actually drive past a closer store that I don't think is much of to go to this other convenience store. So when it comes to customer service, I think they're amazing. They're friendly, they're speedy, and efficient. So I was talking about this at work, saying that it was a really great example of good customer service. And then I thought it was funny because an extroverted colleague didn't agree. She said that this particular store made her feel too rushed, and she wanted to feel more of a connection. More connection, I thought. As an introvert, that seemed kind of funny. I don't enjoy small talk, and definitely prefer deeper conversations. I love the friendliness of the store employees, but I'm not planning on any long-term relationship. But to an extrovert, every interaction is a type of connection, whether or not they're going to have future interactions with that person. Again, remember, introversion and extroversion, neither are good or bad, but they're different. And it's really helpful to understand the differences, and you want to be able to have those conversations that you need to have, but it's not going to make you an extrovert, and you won't necessarily want to have small talk with everybody that you meet. But you can get better at small talk and have it when you need to or want to. So again, sometimes we need a little help with having conversations. And I think back many years ago, I had the chance to go to Blarney Castle in beautiful Ireland. Blarney Castle is the home of the legendary Blarney Stone. According to the legend, whoever kisses the Blarney Stone is gifted with eloquence and persuasiveness, also referred to as the gift of gab. The gift of gab was something I did not have. So, hey, wouldn't it be great? So I made my way up the dark, winding staircase to the top of the castle. When you get to the top, you have to lay on your back and hang upside down to kiss the Blarney Stone. You're 37 feet in the air. And then somebody, whether it's the castle guide or a trusted friend, is holding on to you. Of course, there is a protective grate below to keep people from falling, but it's still pretty scary. Years later, it's hard for me to believe that I actually did that. I'm a little scared of heights and definitely a germaphobe. But I had to do it, right? Plus, what introvert wouldn't want to be blessed with the gift of gab? Well, it didn't work. I was not blessed with the gift of gab that day, even though I kissed the ancient Blarney Stone. So what is the gift of gab? Often people with the gift of gab are described as being charismatic and outgoing. Someone with the gift of gab will find it easy to make a friend quickly. A person with the gift of gab is said to be able to speak easily, eloquently, and confidently, and never run out of things to say. They even have the ability to persuade others to their will, right? I would not describe myself as having the gift of gab. This experience happened long before I understood introversion and what it means and what gifts I have as an introvert. But now I have a much better understanding of my gifts, and I'm much more aware of the various talents others possess as well. For example, as an introvert, I have many great gifts. For example, I see the big picture, I see the connections between ideas, people, and things. I'm very analytical, and I'm a good problem solver. And because I've taken time to understand my gifts and talents, I found a few other ways to increase my gift of gab without trying to kiss the Blarney Stone again. So, how can I speak easily, eloquently, and confidently? I've learned a few things I've found helpful. A big difference between introverts and extroverts is that introverts think and then speak. Extroverts speak to think. Understanding this difference has changed the way I think about my conversations. I know that when someone says something to me, I may respond instantly, or in a few seconds, or a minute, or maybe I need to tell them, hey, I'll get back to you later. All these reactions are completely normal responses. Knowing that I often do best when I'm able to think about something, I find it helpful to prepare for conversations, meetings, or presentations in advance. I think about what I need to discuss and how I can best prepare. For a meeting, I might write down points I want to make and questions I want to pose. Of course, you can't prepare for everything. So I've learned you just got to relax, do your best, and let your awesome introverted mind do its work. If you're thinking before responding, it can be helpful to let the other person know that you're thinking and telling them. And when you tell them this, it can make the silence definitely less awkward. And don't be afraid to ask for time to think, especially if you need to weigh options and make a decision. And also remember, if there's silence in conversation, don't worry. You're not the only one being silent. It's normal. I also find that I have the gift of gab when I'm passionate about something, and I've given a lot of thought to it already. When in these conversations, you might not be able to shut me up. I can talk about introversion all day long. I've also found that even without the gift of gab, I can speak eloquently with a little preparation and passion. I've gained confidence by understanding that I have great gifts and also understanding that I need to think before I speak. It may not always have the words coming to me easily, but it doesn't bother me as much anymore, and I've learned how I best operate. As an introvert, I definitely prefer deep conversation over small talk. However, some small talk to have connections that I want and also need is necessary. And I've gotten better at it. And if you need to, you can too. So I remember attending a neighborhood barbecue, and I wanted to get to know some neighbors a little bit better. So there was that circle of chairs formed, and I was sitting by a neighbor I knew only a little in passing. I'd probably waved hello to him a handful of times. I knew he was a fellow introvert, and I could also tell he wasn't going to start the conversation. And sometimes between introverts, that's the hardest, because we might both be reluctant to start the conversation. It could have been a very awkward evening, but I just started talking to him. As an opener, I resorted to what I think is the lowest form of small talk, the weather. I try not to do that, but sometimes it happens. We chatted about the weather for a bit, and then this led to other conversations. There were pauses here and there, and again, it could have been awkward, but I chose not to let it be that way. And a little silence here and there, like I said, is perfectly normal. So I got to know him a little better. We talked about he loves classic cars. We talked about raising kids. We talked about our jobs. And you know what? He turned out to be a really interesting person. Next time I see him, I'll probably even get to know him a little bit better. It could have gone really differently, and we could have just sat there in awkward silence if I hadn't taken the first step of opening up the conversation. And I just wonder, why do things need to be awkward? I was listening to the radio and I heard Dr. Tai Tashiro discuss his book, Awkward: The Science of Why We're Socially Awkward and Why That's Awesome. In his book, he discusses different ways that people might be awkward, and at the same time, the great gifts the awkward may possess. One comment that Dr. Shishiro made that stood out to me was there was a lot of pressure in the first 5 minutes when we meet people. We are all looking for belonging and connection, but it can be awkward. That made me think about the enormous weight that we often put on first impressions. It also made me think that we should not put so much weight on a first impression, but give people more of a chance. As an introvert, I have definitely had my share of awkward moments, but learning to understand my introversion, I've developed some strategies to reduce awkwardness. And of course, we need to remember, whether we're introvert or extrovert, we can all have awkward moments at times. I could have sat in silence next to the man at the barbecue all evening, just because getting the conversation started was a bit awkward. Or maybe I could have thought he was awkward, not worth the time talking to. But instead, I found out a little bit about him and made a connection. All people are worthwhile and have something to offer. It's a shame that people don't share more about themselves because of the fear of being awkward. Others may not take the time to get to know the awkward person or get past the beginnings of an awkward situation because of a poor first impression. And of course, I'm not saying that all introverts are awkward. Being an introvert doesn't make you awkward, but a lack of understanding your introversion can make you feel awkward at times. I've spent my share of time feeling awkward over the years, but I've realized that by better knowing myself and gaining insight into my own needs and gifts, I can greatly alleviate awkward situations for myself and others. Again, not all introverts are alike, but if I've come to an understanding of my introversion, I've developed some strategies to stop feeling awkward. And you can too. As an introvert, I naturally spend more time in my thoughts, and I'm not always in tune with my surroundings. This can produce feelings of anxiety as you try to navigate new situations and places, because you may need to spend more time processing externally than you usually do. The shift in processing may be uncomfortable if you spend most of your time in your head. I manage this by trying to arrive early, slow down, and remember that most people don't like unfamiliar situations. And, if someone does see me lost in thought, in the past it's definitely made me feel awkward, but now I just acknowledge it. Hey, I'm lost in thought. As introverts, we usually think before we speak. When I didn't understand that about myself, I could get run over by those that talk in order to think, and felt awkward. I felt less than adequate in these situations, and my self confidence waned. But by understanding how I operate, I've come to accept this trait. Now I let people know when I'm thinking, and I take the time that I need. I've also learned to prepare for certain conversations, meetings, or presentations ahead of time so that I don't always have to take that much time to think on the spot. In conversations where I'm the expert, I've already spent so much time thinking that my words do come out more freely. But when I'm in situations where I have to pause to think, I've learned just to relax, let my thoughts do their work. Because introverts think before they speak, often they do prefer to communicate in writing rather than speaking. Think about the next interaction. Is an in person meeting the best, or an email, or a phone call, or a Zoom call? What's most appropriate? Maybe the email is the right thing, and the in person meeting or Zoom meeting will be likely to feel awkward. Every situation is different. Again, plan ahead of time. Sometimes social interaction can be draining for an introvert. You may you need to get to know what drains you and how you best recharge. When you know this, you can plan accordingly. Introverts function best with some time alone each day. Understand this and don't apologize or feel awkward about it. Explain how you work best. It's like, hey, I just need a few minutes to relax. I'll be right back. So when you're feeling drained in an event, a short walk may be the recharge you need. So don't put too much pressure on yourself to stay till the end. Recharge and time alone are normal and nothing to feel awkward about. I've never enjoyed talking about the price of gas or the weather, and I've often avoided this small talk altogether. In the past, I did find myself in a small group or one on one with a person I didn't know well, and I found because I wasn't interested in the conversation, I didn't really have anything to say, and I felt awkward. Others thought I was quiet, and I thought I was quiet. I've learned that in building relationships, you do have to start somewhere, and that small talk may be the necessary gateway to get to those deeper discussions that you want to have. I have gotten better at small talk, but I also accept that I'm never going to be the master of it. I've learned not to worry about awkward silences, and, you know, if it's silent, you're not the only one not talking. Also, I want to build relationships, but no, I'll never be as talkative as some of my extroverted friends. But remember to relax, seek the conversations I want and need to have. And just remember, we can all be awkward from time to time. And if you have an awkward moment or encounter, often it helps just to acknowledge it and maybe even laugh it off. And you can also help others feel less awkward. So if you're with someone that you perceive to be awkward, give them a chance. If they're being quiet, just patiently engage with them in conversation. Try to get to know them and don't put much pressure on first impressions. What are their gifts? Everybody has them. I know as introverts, a lot of us are trying to understand and learn about our own introversion, but we also have great power to turn around awkward situation for somebody else by being understanding and aware of their needs. Sometimes I hear that introverts are good listeners. Is that true? Well, I think it can be true. Some are better than others, and of course, I think we can all improve in listening. I do want to be a good listener. I want to understand others and be understood too. I know I can get better knowing where I'm weak and where I'm strong. So when I'm trying to be a good listener, it's important to be present and limit distractions. As an introvert, it's easy for my mind to wander. And so I need to make sure I'm in the moment with that person and not somewhere else. Also, part of this is not checking my phone and emails. Put the phone down. I may want to close the door and take the conversation where I won't be constantly interrupted. Concentrate on the other person and maintain eye contact. I need to remember that I am listening and not making the conversation about me. I'm hearing what the other person is saying and not only thinking about what I want to say next. I have a bad habit of matching the other person's story with one of my own. Do you ever do that? Often, this takes away from what they're trying to tell me. It also helps me to focus on the person when I maintain eye contact. It's not a stare, but just, looking at the person regularly. Also, try not to interrupt. And this is hard for me. I'm always thinking, and as someone's talking, I think of something that, I, you know, comes up as really important for me, and I naturally want to share it. I have to be careful and let the other person feel heard and let them fully express their thoughts before I jump in. And then it's also important to ask questions and clarify. I'm very good at asking questions. I see connections between people, things, and I want more information. I do need to be careful, with my questions that I'm not coming off as an interrogator. And I often let the person know that I have a few questions for them. Also, in my questioning, I need to make sure this includes some clarifying questions so that I understand the other person's point of view. And as an introvert who naturally spends more time in my head, I have been misunderstood. And over the years, I've made some considerable progress in being understood and understanding others, and have gained skills in listening and building relationships. Most introverts do value a few close relationships where they have some deep and meaningful conversations. At the same time, they may also want and sometimes need to build more relationships at work, in the community, in their church, or a number of different places. Sometimes this means getting out of your head and paying more attention to the people around you. In his classic book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie gives 6 principles on how to connect with others. Become genuinely interested in other people. Smile. Sometimes that's hard right now. We're all wearing masks, and I kind of miss seeing people's smiles. But smile, and maybe they can see you smile on that Zoom call, or they can see your eyes smiling at least behind the mask. Also, remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. Use a person's name. Not too often, but acknowledge their name. Be a good listener, as I just described, and encourage the other person to talk about themselves. Talk in terms of the other person's interest. Make the other person feel important, and be sincere about it. As human beings, whether introverted or extroverted, all the things that Carnegie talked about apply. We all want to feel important and of value. I know that if someone smiles, uses my name, remembers something about me, then I do feel like I'm important to them. I've used these ideas and have built many great relationships, some very close, and, definitely many more that aren't as close, but still very important. And these tips from Dale Carnegie, they didn't come naturally to me at first, but are becoming so much more so natural with time. If building relationships has been a challenge for you, you can use some of these things that we've talked about, these time tested strategies to help you connect with those around you and also let them connect with you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I do want to have further connections with you. Reach out at quietandstrong.com. Email me at david@quietandstrong.com. I will add the social media channels to the show notes. Comment on the social media posts on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, especially related to this podcast. Be part of the conversation. Let's all help each other to connect better as introverts and understand our introverted strengths and gifts. Also, send me questions and we could talk about those on the show. There's so many great things about being an introvert, and so we need those to be understood. Let's keep this conversation going. Get to know your introverted strengths and needs and be strong.